Thanks very much, Chair. I've got a number of questions, if I may. First thing I want to say is congratulations on that Ofsted rating. It's a very hard thing to achieve, and I think you should be very proud. First question I've got is linked to the previous question that was asked, and that's regarding secondary schools. Now, in Market Harborough, we've got two excellent schools, Robert Smythe and one in Park Academy. And you've kind of given some of the answers to how you assess planning growth. But I'm interested to know whether you were consulted in the plans published by Harbour District Council. And within that, actually, this authority described those plans as premature and unsound and without evidence in respect to infrastructure to support it. They wanted to have, as part of those plans, a brand new secondary school. And I'd like to know whether that is something that we're seriously considering and whether that will actually impact the growth plans for both of the two established schools in town, and what would actually be the deciding factors in your mind for that to proceed.
So as part of any local plan, we would be fully consulted on those arrangements, and we would look towards looking at the size of the development and using our pupil yield ratios to determine whether a new secondary school were the right course of action. Again, taking into account the impact upon other neighbouring schools as well. I mean, it's always very tricky. So you've got to make sure you maintain the viability of the entire system, taking into account, for example, in Leicestershire, we've got the primary numbers dropping off and then going through to secondary, and that will hit secondary, that reduction in the years to come. So it's making sure that we are absolutely cognizant of that, but at the same time, making sure that families don't have to travel outside of the local area to access a school place as far as possible. So there's a multifaceted number of factors you take into account. We may make decisions in the here and now based on what we know, but we'd also review those decisions nearer the time to make sure it is responsive to changing patterns of identified need across any local area. And again, which is why when we look at school planning areas, they're much smaller than district areas and wider planning areas, because it's just too difficult to make decisions across a local borough council, for example, or any of the districts. So it is making sure they are, on the whole, as responsive to changing patterns of identified needs as we can be, but it's also making sure that they are adapting to what's happening in the local system as well. That's a bit of a politician's answer in some ways, I suppose, because there are a number of factors you can't take into account when you're making those decisions at an earlier stage. For example, if one of the schools in the local area becomes Ofsted, reducing their Ofsted rating becomes inadequate, you'll see a real shift in the patterns of admissions. So parents will want to go across the border to other schools, or they may want to go in borders across to other schools, but that will cause a real problem in that particular planning area. So we need to make sure we're responsive to that. And that's part of our statutory duty, actually, is to make sure we are being responsive to those particular demands from parents as well. But I should also say at this point that people often talk about school choice. It is a school preference, not a school choice. So it's not always possible to give the parents their choice of school. We'll always do it as far as possible in terms of their preference. But so there's a number of different factors operating at any point in that. But the key is the local plan is consulted on widely, and we'll make sure we based our decisions on the local intelligence and the emerging intelligence at the time of build.
Another question, if I may. Just changing tack slightly, and this is to do with section 20, page 14, under midterm in year admissions. Do we keep any kind of data on the causes of midterm admissions? And you're nodding your head there, that's good. The reason why I'm asking is because obviously one of those causes is probably down to bullying in schools, where parents want to switch to another school. And as we have a safeguarding responsibility, as do the schools, I just wanted to check to see what we do in those circumstances, how schools report to you on those things and what we do about it. I often think that some of the schools actually do shuffle these problems, and I want to make sure that actually that we are scrutinising that very carefully, and I'm seeing some knowing looks here, so you're obviously doing that, so I'll allow you to answer the question.
Thank you. No, a really good and really important question, actually. We make sure that we've got spare capacity in the system, The National Audit Office recommends between 5 and 10% slack in the system, so parents can move around where they need to. We're also very much aware that some schools may, what we call off-roll is the terminology that's used by the government. And where we see that happening, we have an inclusion team which will go in and challenge those schools and support those families, either to make sure they're not being off-rolled or they are able to access alternative places within their local community as far as possible. And we also have in place what we call a fair access panel for those families whose children are finding it difficult to access an alternative school place, or indeed a school place if they're moving in for a variety of different reasons. But yes, that's one of our highest priority areas to monitor and track and challenge schools where it's happening.
Thank you very much. I'd like to